Hello students, and welcome to the MLA Formatting and Avoiding Plagiarism tutorial. A quick note before I begin this video and this presentation. Some of the materials within this presentation have been borrowed from a variety of sources, and when you click on the actual slides, which I'll make available to you, you will find that source information in the speaker notes section underneath each slide where applicable. Let's get started. So first, what is plagiarism? According to the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, to plagiarize means to, quote, steal and pass off the ideas or words of another as one's own, use another's production without crediting the source, to commit literary theft, present as new and original an idea or product derived from an existing source. Right? That's from the 2004 edition of Webster's Dictionary. Plagiarism includes the following offenses: copying, quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing from any source without giving proper credit. It also counts when you are submitting another person's work as if it was your own. And it's also plagiarism if you are purchasing or downloading a paper and turning it in as if it was your own work. So a couple of key terms, right, to understand before we move forward. So the first one I wanted to go over was direct quote, right? What it means is to insert into your essay the exact words of an author, speaker, presenter, etc. And then on the right-hand side, what it looks like, right? The following is an example taken from a student's essay on the play Fences by August Wilson. The student wrote, "Troy turns to his son Lyons and says, quote, I done learned my mistake and learned to do what's right by it. You still trying to get something for nothing." And then in parentheses at the end, you see Wilson 23, okay, the author's last name and the page number where the quote appeared. Some common errors when people try to do this, right, when they make a direct quote, is they forget to put in the quotation marks, or they put the quotation marks in the wrong spot, or the citation that they give at the end, that Wilson 23, is done incorrectly or is placed incorrectly. Another key term moving forward is the word paraphrasing. So what it means is to summarize someone else's words and or ideas and then put them into your own words. So if you take a look on the right-hand side, right, that direct quote is the same one that we just looked at on the previous screen, right? And so what would it look like if instead of using the author's exact words, if I paraphrased it? They would look like this, or could look something like this. Troy turns to his son Lyons and says the difference between them is he has learned from his mistakes while Lyons is still trying to get something for free. You'll notice that the paraphrasing still gets all the same information across in my own words, but also still gives the author credit for what they actually wrote originally. And that's the biggest common error when it comes to paraphrasing, is often students forget to put in that citation at the end. Another key term to know, or key item for us to know, is the works cited page, right? And what it means is it's a list of information given at the end of an essay indicating what sources were used throughout the essay. And if you take a look on the right-hand side, I have a sample one from an essay that a student had written later in the year. And it lists a bunch of different sources, and I want to talk about those in a second. But the major common errors when it comes to your works cited page is either forgetting to include it in your essay or incorrect formatting of the citation itself. There will be a separate video on how to use Noodle Tools, which is a program that'll help make your works cited pages for you, and it makes it much easier. It's kind of plug and play. If you take a closer look at this sample works cited page that's here, you'll notice that the types of things that go on your works cited page are not just the book titles, but it's also things like contextual information that's handed out during class, like this first one written by Martha Fletcher Bellinger, right? You'll also note that my name appears here, right? Because I did a lecture, if you notice it says here, right? I did a lecture on conventions of the horror genre, and this student used some of the stuff from my lecture in their essay. You'll also notice these dashes right next to the wild context entry. That's because that was another lecture that I delivered. whenever you have the same author listed twice on your works cited page, you don't have to keep using their last name. You just use the 3 dots to indicate that it's the same as the one above. And then those are the outlying ones. But if you look at the bottom, right, Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House is listed there, and Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest is also there. And those are core texts, or primary sources, as they're referred to. So parenthetical or in-text citation, right? It's the information included within parentheses at the end of a sentence containing a quote from a source. And this is that same example we've been working with. So what the in-text citation or the parenthetical citation is the author's last name and the page number where that quote appears. There will be times when what you're quoting doesn't have a page number. So for example, you're quoting from a video, and then there will be specific rules about how to go about putting in your in-text citation. But in general, it's the author or creator's last name and some sort of indication of how or where in that text you would find that quote you're looking for. The most common errors are people forget to put in the citation. They do the punctuation around the in-text citation incorrectly, or they place the in-text citation in the wrong spot. And I'm going to talk about those in just a second. So when you are putting in a parenthetical or an in-text citation, like the one that you saw in the previous examples right up here at the top, your quote should have the following 4 items, right? There should be a lead-in, which provides a bridge between your words and the author's words, a comma to separate your words from the author's, quotation marks around the borrowed text, and then ending punctuation at the end of the entire thought or sentence. And it's important that you kind of pay attention to that last part there, right? The ending punctuation comes at the end of the entire thought or sentence. So visually showing you what that looks like, those 4 items, looks like this, right? Troy turns to his son Lyons and says is the lead-in. Then there's that comma to separate my words, or this, in this case, this student's words, right, from the quote from the book. You have to show me where does the quote begin with the first set of quotation marks and where does the quote end with the second quotation mark. And then you'll notice that in this example, the quote and this student's sentence both end at the same spot. So the period to show that that sentence is over goes at the very end after the citation here. Okay. And so the placement of the in-text citation, where to put that stuff that's in the parentheses. The goal is to provide your reader with the key info that they need without disrupting the flow of the sentence, right? And as we just pointed out in that last slide, this is what it looks like when your quote that you're using and your sentence or idea end at the same place. Normally, when I look in the book, in August Wilson's play on page 23, there would have been a period at the end of the word nothing because the character had finished the sentence there, right? I also have a period that's ending my sentence, so that goes here. There's no need to have 2 of those periods, right? You don't repeat something needlessly. However, you're not always going to have a situation where your quote and your sentence end at the same time. This is what it looks like when they don't end in the same place, for example. When Troy tells his son Lyons, quote, I done learned my mistake and learned to do what's right by it, you still trying to get something for nothing, end quote, he is telling him to grow up. Notice here that instead of the quote ending where the student's thought ends, right, the quote is actually in the middle of the sentence and the student kind of finishes his or her idea and then ends the sentence with the period. Here's what it looks like if you do it incorrectly, right? If you notice, if I put in the citation when the quote is done, but I still have more to say, he is telling him to grow up, the citation gets in the way, right? It kind of interrupts the flow of the sentence. So again, the whole goal is to provide your reader with an uninterrupted experience as they're kind of reading through the paper. So we don't want it to look this way. We're going to throw that one out. We want them to look like one of these, right? Either they both end in the same spot and only one period needs to go there, or they don't both end at the same spot, but I clearly show when I'm done by putting my end punctuation there. So how those parenthetical or in-text citations work, right? You're reading an essay and you come upon the following sentence. Troy turns to his son Lyons and says, blah, blah, blah. That same example we've been looking at, right? You think to yourself, that's fantastic. I want to read that part of the text for myself. I want to look at what happened before or after that quote, or some other reason for you to want to go back and look at the quote in the text. So what you do, right, you flip to the end of the essay and you look at that works cited page. And when you get there, right, the in-text citation, right, Wilson 23, the in-text citation says Wilson 23. So you look through the list of names, right, and the authors are always listed by their last names alphabetically. And you can see exactly what book the writer used when they reference the text, right down to what edition or what publication year it was. Okay. Obviously, there's only one entry in here, but if there were multiple entries, that makes it really easy for you to kind of sort through the different things and find the key information that you may need to use yourself. The goal of your works cited page is to be a quick and comprehensive list of all the text that you consulted while writing your paper, even the sources that you didn't quote directly, but one of your sources references. So for example, I found a quote in author A's article that I really want to use in my essay. Upon closer inspection, it turns out that author A got that idea or quote from another author, author B. When it's time for me to cite my sources, I would put both author A and author B on my works cited page. We'll talk about how you would do the in-text citation for that scenario a little later in the course, but it's important that you understand that, author A didn't work alone, right? Author A needs to be cited properly, but the work and the sources that author A also used, right? Author B's stuff also need to be given credit. The general rule of thumb when it comes to, should I cite it or should I not cite it is always cite it. When in doubt, just cite it anyway. It's much better to kind of be overly cautious than to not be cautious enough. So the question always kind of comes up, when do I use in-text citation for this class, right? You're going to use in-text citation every single time you use a quote or you paraphrase from one of the following things: a text that we're reading in class, any material from the contextual information that I hand out in class or those context assignments that I give you, anytime you take something from a lecture or notes that I provide for you, and anytime that you're using a visual text like a movie clip such as this one, a YouTube video, etc., that we use in class. As far as when you need to actually make a works cited page, there's only 2 times that you're going to need to do that. That's when you submit your IA outline, and then the other time will be when you submit your higher level essays, right? And we'll be doing several of these along the way, so you'll get good practice and I'll be able to give you feedback on whether or not you're doing it correctly and whatnot. But basically, you don't have to, just to back up, while you do have to use in-text citation in every single time you make a reference, that doesn't mean you have to have a works cited page every single time, okay? The works cited page is reserved for like the larger projects, like your IA outline and your higher level essays. I'm going to create a tutorial video on how to use Noodle tools at a later date, and that video will cover how to cite different types of text. If you have the physical book in your hand versus if you're reading it from a website, if you are citing a video or listening to a podcast, etc. And I'll make that video available on Canvas. All right, at this time, I'm going to have a message box pop up. If you have any questions, please let me know by indicating on Nearpod what in the box what questions you have. Or if you are not watching this asynchronously, right? If you're watching this live, I'd like you to go ahead and end the video. Give me that blue or green, the green yes or the blue thumbs up on Zoom, and then we'll have time to do a question and answer ourselves. Thank you for watching.